Hello, welcome. I'm going to start something new tonight. I'm getting interested in moving towards more kind of real world Haskell or looking at concerns that I would normally have when programming for a living in Haskell. Because I've been doing this for a couple of years, I think, like 1 hour a week of Haskell and some stuff in between. But it's writing toy projects a lot of the time. And this will still be a toy project, but I was thinking about things like I was looking at some code recently in work, and so much of the code is things like dealing with logging, dealing with error handling, dealing with metrics. The actual domain functionality is quite a small amount of the code. And I'm kind of interested in how this would look in Haskell. And on a similar, slightly different note, I'm quite interested in effect systems, and I'm wondering how something like Effectful will structure my application. So, the plan is to start a new project. I'm going to build something fintechy because it's what I do for a living, so it's something I'm reasonably familiar with. And I want to make it complicated enough to be interesting, but not so complicated as to be difficult. And then use it as a vehicle for investigating things like how do I plug in Effectful, or how do I use it with Prometheus, how do I use it with structured logging, those kinds of things. Maybe about deployment as well. Not sure I'm going to go down to sort of full deployment, looking at how we use Nix and so on, but just little things like if you're running it in Kubernetes, you want liveness checks, for example. So how would you go about writing that kind of thing in Haskell? How would you deal with things like refreshing the database connection when it dies, or periodically disconnecting and reconnecting to something? So those are the kinds of things that I spend a lot of time doing when I'm really programming for money, that I haven't really done when looking at Haskell. So, brand new project. Let's just get started with it. I'm going to call it payme, and it's going to be a simple payment system. I probably won't write a full payment system, but the idea will be that I'm kind of interested in building a ledger because that's quite simple to do, and have the idea of money arriving at the ledger, so crediting a ledger, and money leaving a ledger, so debiting it. And then within the context of that, looking at things like, how do we add metrics around it? How do we log it properly? All those kinds of things. So I'm going to create a thing called payme, and if I take valid it, yeah, it remembers all of my sayings, hopefully. That language is not right, I don't think. Oh, what are my options for language? Let me leave off language, I'll look it up in a second. In code dot here. Do I trust the author? No. Because it's me. I always get it wrong. I don't want Haskell 2010. Is it 2023, 2024? I can't remember what the default language things are. Like payme. Yeah. It is now officially pronounced like payme. Good call. Okay. Let me just get the default language right. So Val, default language. What are my options? Default language. Come on. Yeah, what options do I have? Well, that's annoying. It's not going to tell me. It's identifier, but it won't tell me what the language is. What options can I pass in here? So the reason I'm doing this instantly is I want the latest version, because it includes a lot of language extensions by default. It is GHC 2024. Okay. GHC 2024. Hopefully that'll work. There are a whole bunch of extensions in there that I will be turning on at some point, so I might as well have them in place. I'm just going to change this block. Actually, I've done this a little bit wrong because I wanted a library as well. I'll fix that in a second. So this I'm just going to put into what do I call this common block? Call it shared, I guess. I can pop this up here and the default language up here. So that when I create a library and some tests later on, then it will import these as well. Okay, and then just say cabal setup, cabal build, do everything I wanted to do. Just make sure it works. It does not. Unknown language GHC 2024. There's also 2021, so let's see if that one works. Maybe 2024 is very new. Okay, GHC 2021 seems to work. And it says hello Haskell. Good. Right. Okay, so plan. What is the plan for this? The plan. So what I'm thinking of doing initially is just building a simple concept of an account, like a bank account, not like a user account. And to do that, I want to implement a pretty straightforward ledger. So the ledger is just a set of ledger entries, and it's a collection of debits and credits. Credits and debits, same way around. Credits and debits. Okay, so a credit is when the person that owns the account receives money coming in, adding to their pool of money, and a debit is money going out, so them paying something. So a credit would be something like them receiving a payment or receiving interest or something like that. And a debit will be them making a payment or paying interest on a loan or those kinds of things. And I want to implement it as just being one big ledger. I'm not going to worry too much about scalability here. So if you're doing this sort of bank scale, you wouldn't want it all running on one server, certainly, and you probably wouldn't want it running one database either. I'm not going to care about that so much. It's going to be a tiny little system, so I'm just going to stick it all in Postgres. I'm going to have one ledger, and it's going to represent all the debits and credits in the system. Inside the ledger, I'm thinking we'll probably have some kind of, I'm going to say an account ID. So this is the account that the credit or debit is associated with. So I know which account is receiving money or which account is paying money. I'm going to have the type, which is either going to be credit or debit. I'm going to have an amount. I'll have to think about the best way of representing the amount. I'm not doing calculations on this, I'm just storing it. So I don't need to worry so much about how much precision I have for calculating fractions of a pence. So I could probably just do it in an int64 or something like that. And just represent it as basically cents and then divide by 100 to get the dollars and cents or pounds and pence or whatever. What else we got in there? I'm going to have a source, which is going to be a little bit complicated, but it's going to be things like it'll come from a payment. Oh, this is only for a credit, actually. For a credit, I'll have a source. I'll say it comes from this payment, or it maybe comes as an interest payment from this thing. I don't know, like the savings account. And for a debit, I'll have a destination, I think, which again is going to be a payment or interest or charges or whatever. Anything else I want in there? Dates, date time, so when it took effect. And that should probably be enough. Accounts, so the ledger will link to an account, and this is a couple of things. So it's a collection of ledger entries. So we can say I have a particular account. Here are all the transactions that happen inside there. So all the credits and debits. It's going to have an ownership. Now, there's a bit of saying owner, like you have somebody that owns the account, but ownership can be a little bit complicated. You can have an account, you can have a joint account, for example, which has got two owners, or it could be a company account. So it'll have some concept of something that owns it, but I don't know what. It'll have, I'm going to say an account number, but it's basically a way of referencing that account so that you can pay money into it, or you can see where money came from. The idea will be slightly different, but yeah, the account, I'm just going to have an account number. Typically, you would have multiple ways of referencing that account. So you might have the number that your bank uses. In the UK, they'll follow a particular format and be joined to a sort code, and that's how somebody would reference your account. But you also might have an IBAN for making payments within Europe. You might have a SWIFT BIC for making international payments. There may be multiple ways of referencing this account, but I'm just going to have a simple account number, I think. And then this one's a bit dubious. I'm not quite sure whether or not to do this, but I'm thinking about putting the amount on there as well. So in theory, the amount of money you have in an account is just the sum of all the credits and debits. And you could totally work out the amount, how much money is in an account by taking all of those credits and debits, all the ledger entries, and just summing them together. But that doesn't work over a long period of time. So as you get an awful lot of ledger entries, you're doing an awful lot of work to calculate the amount. It also means that ledger entries can't change when you're looking at the amount. So one reason we might look at the amount is to say, is there enough money in this account to make a payment? And if the ledger entries change while you are summing them up, then you get the wrong answer, potentially. You could think there's enough money, and then someone could debit the account after you've got the ledger entries, but before you've made your decision. And then the account would go overdrawn, or there would be not enough money to cover that particular debit. So I'm thinking of just as I add a ledger entry, so a credit or debit, updating the amount on the associated account. And that doesn't work at scale, but I'm not writing this at scale. So I think this will be okay. The reason it doesn't work at scale, roughly, is that you kind of want it to be a transaction. So you want to make sure that you write the ledger entry and you update the amount in a transaction. And transactions across distributed systems can be quite complicated or slow, or both. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to guarantee you can do a transaction, or want to lock so much data for that period of time, because you might be locking across different systems that have to coordinate. And the risk when getting out of sync is pretty bad as well. So if you just relied on eventual consistency, you wouldn't be able to make sensible decisions about things like, is there enough money in an account? The other thing you can do is create checkpoints. So you might say every night we're going to run a job. It's going to lock the account, count up all this stuff, write an entry which says that at this point in time, this is the amount of money in this account. And then when you want to work out the current amount inside there, you go to the last checkpoint and you get all the entries since that point. That requires some strict ordering. Probably you just write it as a special entry in your ledger table. So you grab the checkpoint, you read everything above it. I'm not going to do that. It gets a little bit complicated, and strict ordering is an issue in itself. So not going to do that. I think I'm just going to update the amount on the account, because I'm not going to have any users. This is all a fake system. So that's what I'm going to put into account. That was quite long-winded. But that's the kind of data I'm going to put in there. Source and destination I'll get to later. I'll just create dummy things for those now. I might not even get some at all. It may not be particularly relevant. So I want to write some kind of API which lets you credit, debit, and then show an account. Maybe list all the accounts we have and show an account. So credit and debit, I'm going to reword as receive a payment and make a payment. Listing accounts makes sense. Showing an account will show the amount, some information about who owns it, and some recent transactions, or maybe all transactions, something like that. And then I want, eventually, I want to build some production-like things. So I will want some metrics. I want things like how many transactions, how much money are we processing in total, how long does it take to credit, debit, maybe things like how often our debits declines due to lack of funds. And I can maybe make up some more things to put in there, but that's the kind of thing that I want to be able to answer with my metrics. So it doesn't really matter what these are, it's just a process of finding out when I'm building an application in Haskell, how do we talk to Prometheus? I guess that's the fundamental thing. How do we emit various different types of events? Logs, I guess the key thing for the logs is I really want to say, given an ID, tell me everything that happened. Happened and which system or component, depends how you write this, did it. Also for logs, tell me if anything was wrong. You maybe have some log-based alerting, might have some metric-based alerting as well, but you probably have some log-based alerting, which is like every time you log at an error level, then raise an alarm and get someone to come and look at it. Errors shouldn't happen. Error handling, and also maybe queuing here. Queuing. Queuing is an implementation detail of this, though. What I really want is the ability to retry transient errors. So if we're trying to write to a database and it's not available for some reason, I don't want to just fail it. I want to be able to retry it. And ideally, I'd like to have some kind of dead letter queue, right, DLQ, and the ability to retry. So if you're trying to do something and it's consistently failing, then we can store that thing that we're trying to do somewhere and redo it later. This is some elements of event sourcing in this approach. Event sourcing is quite a good fit for ledgers because ledgers are just a series of events with some occasional aggregates inside there. But I'd like this kind of, if something is not working, then rather than just throw it away, that we log an error and we put it in dead letter queue and we have the ability to retry it. So that means talking to a queuing system, and I don't really know what queuing system I want to look at or how to interact with it, but that's a thing to look at. Anything else? I think that's enough to be getting on with. And then within that as well, I also want to look at, as I said, I'm going to look at effectful as the effect system to say how does it structure things. I want to, at some point, it'd be good to look at liveness and readiness. Physical readiness? Don't know. That'll do for now. So basically telling fake. I probably won't set up Kubernetes, but if I do, it'd be telling Kubernetes that the service is there, and then also that the service is ready to receive requests. And then failing readiness when the database goes away, for example, or during deployment or something like that. I don't know how much this will do, but I'm kind of curious about what it's like to actually deploy this in some kind of Kubernetes-like environment. And this is one aspect of it. I may also be interested in looking at things like how do we build a Helm chart for a Haskell application. But I don't know if I'll look at that yet. Plenty of stuff to be getting on with. I'm going to start today with stuff that I know how to do, which is creating. I say stuff I know how to do. Actually, some stuff I know how to do and some stuff I don't. But I'm going to start by creating some models for the ledger and the account. And then I'm going to look at writing this to Postgres. Ooh, yeah, that's one thing I don't know how to do, actually. I'm kind of interested in migrations. I'm going to use persistent, I think. I had a look at some different options today, but I think I'm going to stick with persistent Esqueleto. And it will run migrations for me, but it won't run migrations in a production compatible way. So you tell it what your schema is, and then you can tell it to go and make the database match that schema, which would be an absolute disaster if you're looking at rolling out some code and then rolling it back again, whatever. You kind of want to control your migrations in a different way. You want to know when it's going to run migrations. You want to make sure that migrations are run at the right time, typically before you deploy code. And if you have to roll something back, that you can do that in a controlled way. So I'm interested about how migrations work. Maybe slightly related to that is, it's not really related to that, but thinking about the database, we got config and mvars. So again, this is probably deployment related, but how do you get your config out of the environment? Yeah, so I'm guessing this is going to be quite simple, but I wonder what the libraries look like and what it actually looks like in Haskell to put a configuration out of the environment and use that. Plenty of stuff. Back to the Cabal file for a second. So I actually wanted a library. I'll import shared. Whoops. When I get to library, I will import shared, and is it sources or something, or source? And it's not sources, it's source directory. Oh, it's just this one. I can see it there, I think. So that's going to be source, and then there's something like modules. Expose modules, and I want to generate the right thing. I'm going to import ledger. Oh, hey Nicholas, welcome back. Okay, so hopefully that is the correct syntax in this file. So I should say /ledger. I mean, it's a good start. Something at least is working. Okay, just go back to the shell and just build it again and see what errors I'm getting. None. That's cool. Okay. Back to file file. So here, I want to say build depends on And this whole thing is called payme. Hopefully it'll catch up. Yeah, okay. I don't know what my errors are. Oh, they're spelling errors. I know what they are. In the plan, didn't like TX. Transactions and dead letter Q. There we go. I have no errors. Okay. So one of the things I'm quite looking forward to is Haskell is using data types to model stuff properly, or better. Actually, rather than ledger, I'm going to say ledger entry is either going to be a ledger credit with a credit, or a ledger debit with a debit. Is that right? Let's start with that, see where it goes. Deriving stock show an equal. Okay, and then deriving strategies. I just want to grab, so I can go to Cabal file and I can say, is it default extensions or language extensions? Not that. Not that. Maybe it was default extensions. Yes, it was. Okay. Okay. So a credit is going to be a record, and in here we have an amount which is of type money, which I don't have yet. So let's just quickly create that. So data money, I'll move to site in a second, is money. It's a new type, not a data, I think. Money and money amount. I don't know what I'm going to call this, but the amount itself is going to be, I think I'm going to put it in 64. Okay, I want a couple of extensions here. Oh, I'm going to give an extension. It's not unsaddled instances, is it? I think that's too much. The record dot syntax thing, and there's another one that goes with it usually. Haskell record dot. What's the extension called? Overloaded records. That was it. Duplicate record fields was the other one. Okay. So in here, that one, and duplicate record fields. Hopefully that'll make this error go away. It did not. It did, it just hasn't restarted properly yet. Okay. So HLS hasn't caught up. It's annoying. There we go. Okay, cool. So int64, I'm going to import that. And then debit. Oh, so there's more to it than this. So this is deriving stock show an equal. And data debit is debit. Some of this is going to be in common, and I'm not sure whether to pull it up into the ledger entry or whether I want to just duplicate it in each of these. Deriving stock an equal, and then this is going to be deriving new type, show an equal. Just makes it a bit prettier when you print it out. Okay. So we can now build ledger entries by putting amounts in there. I'm going to make this slight. I'm going to put more stuff at this level actually, I think. So I'm going to make this a record, and I'm going to say inside here we have a transaction. Is that what I want? Transaction, which is of type transaction. I just quickly did deriving stock show an equal, and then I'll have data transaction. And that's what I'll say. Oops. Try it again. That's what I'll say. It's either a credit or debit. Okay. So we've got a transaction in here. We will have a date time, which is Google. There's some date time. Maybe there's not. Definitely UTC time. Okay, but it doesn't come from ASIN, it comes from somewhere else. I'm sure we had a time. Oh, yeah, okay. There's a module called time, package called time. And I can say UTC time. Okay. So here I want to say UTC time. Hopefully, no. Import data.time. Can I import that? No. So I have to. Actually, it's an external library. So time 114. So here I'll say it depends time at 1.14. Give it a second. Hopefully. Okay, and then I can say unimport UTC time. Okay, so we have our ledger's got a transaction, so a credit or debit. It's got the time it happened, and I said there's going to be an account ID, which is of type account ID. Which I'll quickly create, and for now, I will create a new type for it, I think, because I want it to be very safe. We'll say account ID is equal to account ID. Inside here, we'll say get account ID, and it's going to be a UID of some kind. So I will need to import UID, and I can't remember what version of the library that was, even though I did it last time we were here. UID. Give me a version. 1315. Hopefully. Nope. What went wrong there? Result dependencies. I just get the version of time wrong. The version of time. Time's got a 112.1 and I've asked for 114. Oh, there we go. What do I put in the file? What's this problem? So try a new UID. That seemed to be okay. Then next call is time. It's rejecting it. It rejects this. Ah, okay. UID wants time greater or equal to 1.4, but less than or equal to 113. Okay. I need an older version of time. It looks happier. While that's building, let's go back to here. That should be done in a second. Restart the LSP. Maybe soon. It's still building. Okay, I can now import UID. Deriving new type, show and equal. I don't need to make the ledger a sequence, so I don't need a sequence number inside there, which is good. I don't need any kind of counter. We got transaction, we got date time, we got account ID. Let me have a quick look. So in the plan, I said I'm going to count the type, credit or debit, the amount, which I've pushed on to credit or debit. Source I'm not going to do yet, and destination I'm not going to do yet. They belong to the credit or the debit. And the date time, that should be good enough. Okay, and then we'll probably want some stuff on here so that we can sum up all of the. Sorry to think ahead. So you probably want something here so we can sum up all the ledger entries. So I could just implement semigroup on it so that you can just join together. Basically, summing a ledger entry depends on summing the credit or debit, and credit will add to it, and debit will subtract from it. So we could do that. Actually, let me just go to the console for a second. REPL port ledger. So what I really want to do is, if I have something which is a list of ledger entries, then I want to be able to say sum, and then my list of entries. So the type of sum is it needs something which is foldable, but also implements num. Oops. And num is something that defines plus minus times. So the minimal, sorry, is what I want. Plus multiplication, negate, or subtraction. From integer, signum and abs. So I could try implementing num for a ledger entry, but it seems a little bit weird. I'm going to try it and see if it works. So instance num ledger entry where, and it won't fill stuff in for me, will it? Ooh. No, it did. Good. Okay. So to add two ledger entries together, we want to see whether it's a credit or a debit. So let me just say add, go some, oops, ledger entry to ledger entry. Actually, let me add the transactions together because it's a transaction I'm really interested in. Because this is a thing that is either a credit or debit. So adding a ledger credit this needs to go to, it needs to go to another ledger entry. That's quite annoying. Actually, it's really not what I want. So I don't want to implement this class because I don't want this return type of ledger entry. That would be really annoying. Because it won't have, it's not a ledger entry. I think that's the thing. It is some kind of aggregate. Okay, let's get rid of that. I'm just going to write a new function called sum ledger, which is going to go from traversable. So we got some kind of T ledger entry. Then I want to go to an int 64. Hope it doesn't overflow. Shame it won't do. And these are X's. And then I should just be able to fold over these. And then it's add tx 0 x's. Is that right? It's some ledger, to call it. Where? So tx is going to go from a transaction, I hope. No, it's not. It's going to go from a ledger entry. It's going to go from, let me just check the type of folder, but it's the accumulator first, isn't it? Accumulator and then the entry and then the accumulator. So in this case, it's going to go from int 64, int 64 to that, to another int 64. So add tx, where we have a ledger entry, where the transaction doesn't feel like I'm doing this right, is a ledger credit. Don't want those brackets. Of C, then we should just be able to say, oh, sorry, the first thing is actually the accumulator. That should be ACC plus C.amount. I should call this ledger entry. No quick fixes available. What I really want, show us an extension for this. I want to ignore everything apart from transaction. This is much easier. What I really want to do is add transactions together. See, it feels like I've got this a bit wrong. Maybe I haven't though. I don't know. Feels like I want to take a ledger entry and I want to go to its monetary value. And it's money that should be summable. So the amount of a ledger entry where the transaction itself is a ledger credit and we don't care about anything else in there. Should you see that amount? I don't have enough brackets. Do that for a second. Oh, where's the error now? Multiple declarations of amount. Oh yes. Okay. Let's call this ledger amount. Okay, so that's what we do for credit. This is what we do for debit. Okay, and we want this not to be int64 but money. Just remembered. And here we should just be able to say foldle over take the thing we have. Actually let me call this entry. Okay, let me inline it and then I'll think about what to do with it. So this is the accumulator, and the result of this is the accumulator plus the ledger amount for X. And this 0 should be money 0. Oh, it takes 2 elements, doesn't it? Sorry, it takes and X. Okay, good. So now we can't add money together, and that makes more sense to implement the num class on money, because money is a number. And here, adding money is really easy. It's just plus. Can I do this? Will it just derive it for me? Oh, there we go. It just occurred to me that I didn't need to do anything, as I can just say plus is plus and minus is minus. So we can derive this. That's quite nice. Just going to start to split this out a little bit. So I have ledger, I also want money. in a second. Right, marginal money. And I'm just going to grab the money class from here. Drop it in there, and that's the only thing we'll export for now. This one I should be able to import. We will export everything for money. And then here, we should import that. Oops. Oh no. Dance normal, dance mode. Oh, my plugin's gone funny. I've lost the thing in the status bar. There you go. I need to say it should be normal. Okay. So when we import money and then do that, get rid of that one. Okay. So where is my error? Money HSS. File doesn't match module name. Saw main expected money. What did I do? That looks right. And that doesn't look right. What's the problem? Is it really a problem, or is it the language server? It's the language server's gone wrong. Okay. So in main, what I'll just do is create some entries, print them out, and then print out the sum. So what can I say? I can have some dummy ledger entries. So a dummy ledger is going to be a list of ledger entry of ledger credit of money 100, and then we need some time, and we need an account ID. So I can say demo account 1 is UI is, I'll just use v4, I guess. New random. I'm going to need all this stuff now. We're going to need access to these in main. We shouldn't normally, so I'll just stick them in here temporarily. So we also want dummy account 1, and we want the time as well. And to get the time, I can say something like I just want to get the current time. Oh, I want something. I don't want to get times, I want to get the current time. I can't remember what that is. So I want to go, oops. I'm going to go, I just want something that gives me back a UTC time. That's not very helpful. what's it called? Should just be a straightforward, give me the current time. Get current time. Why didn't, oh, because I put in brackets maybe? Shouldn't matter though. Anyway, get current time. So this is going to take a UTC time, getting to that under IO, and I'm going to give back a list of ledger entries. So this, I import, and UTC time, I will import. I'm going to import everything from ledger entry. And it's going to be T. It's going to drop T into there. Okay. Then we want to pull that in. We want to import money. Can match money with credit. Oh, this is a horrible type. I don't like it. So now, look a bit like that. And then what's the problem here? It can't match account ID with UTC time. So what does ledger entry look like? It goes time first. Okay, and then V4, hopefully. No, it's not new random, it's next random. No, it's random. That's what this is called. EOID V4 next random. Not next in any meaningful sense. Okay, so the type of dummy account should be an account ID. So I'm going to import that, and then it should be account ID of that. I got dummy account 1. And I need to import the constructors for account ID as well. And I jump to that. Account ID should just take a UID. What's the problem? Oh, this one's under IO. Damn it. Okay, so this is also going to take an account. And this is actually going to be IO of that. Then again. Okay, we're getting closer, so couldn't match. This is now going to take an account ID. Right. Because a lot of stuff is happening under IO. Okay, so we can say, well, first of all, we'll get our time is get current time, and we'll get our account, which is dummy account 1. Oops. And then we'll get our ledger, so let ledger equal dummy ledger with T and account, and then we'll say put strlen show the ledger. I can say print at that point, so I'll print the ledger and put strlen, so we have a blank line, and then we can say put strlen again, and we can say total is, I'm going to show the, whatever I called that function, was it ledger amount? Show ledger amount from the ledger. Right, get current time. Let's import that. Total amount is, oh, I think that's in the wrong place. No, it's not. Okay. Let's start with this. So let's import that, and then now ledger amount is money. Ah, okay. So a couple of things, I've got that. And let's just be able to pop my show back in there. And now it's not happy because, oh, it wasn't ledger amount I wanted. It was some ledger. Could use a UID v1, v6, or v7, skip the timestamp. So I actually want to use, I thought I wanted to use a v6. No is the answer. It stops at 5. I could use a 1. That might be better. I also was thinking maybe I want to use, the disadvantage of using something that starts with a timestamp is it shards better, but I'm not dealing with scale here, so I don't really need to care about sharding. Maybe look at using a UID v1 might be a good idea, because like you said, it contains a timestamp in there. I'm a little bit wary about linking the ID and the timestamp together. It is entirely possible that the time on the ledger entry doesn't match the point at which you create it, or at the point at which you generate the ID. So it's probably not a good idea long term to collapse the two together, but it might be totally appropriate for this little dummy application. Don't know. It's not a bad idea. Compile run. Okay, cool. So we've got this ledger entry and the total. We could do with more than one ledger entry. So we'll have another one which is, let's say 92, and then we'll have a debit, which is a debit. I wish I'd made these slightly shorter types. I might go back and fix those. I might fix my money class as well, so that like overloaded strings, there's a equivalent for overloaded numbers, basically. I can't quite remember what it's called. It's something like from integer, but I can't remember exactly what it is. And that would mean I wouldn't have to write money 54. I could just write 54. It'll do it for me. Okay, this should be, I'm going to change that to something. No, I can subtract two numbers together. It should be 138. It is not. Okay, so bit of a bug there. Ledger amount, it should be minus. Is that right? Or should the debit just be a smaller, it should be a negative number? I don't know if I want to say the debit has an amount of something. kind of feel like it would make sense if it's a negative amount, I just store it as a negative amount. I don't think I need all these types. I have too many types going on here. Let me just make sure that works. And I'll just try and clean up my types a little bit. So 138, that was the correct answer. Why do you keep getting stuck in the wrong mode? Okay, so going back to the ledger. I might just put the amount in here. Type money. I won't have a transaction, but I'll have a transaction type. It makes sense to me to put money first. No, actually, I'm going to put transaction type first. Transaction type, which is a transaction type. And down here we got account ID, that's going to be right soon. But here I can have transaction type is credit or debit. And that should be enough. I get rid of these. There's no point in putting the amount lower down. So there's no extra argument there, but there are more things here. And then it's the amount. And the amount, let me just return that. Okay, and then we'll define a couple of helpers. So I'm going to start getting strict about what we can actually use from here. You can see the ledger type. But you can't construct it. And then they're going to have something which is make credit. And it's going to take an amount, which is money, and an account ID, and it's going to return, so I'll fill in the date at this point. No, I'm going to take the time. I'm not going to run under IO. So I'll also take, I'm going to take the time that this credit should be listed. Account ID, and I'm going to return a ledger entry. This should be really easy, so make credit is a ledger entry. It's got an amount and time and an account ID. So it's credit with this amount and I'm going to do something I think. No, I'll leave that. So it's credit, amount, T, and account ID. And that's my credit. Okay, and then I'm going to say McDebit. It's the same thing basically, but I'm just going to invert the amount. And then the other one was some ledger, I think it was. Oh, I need to export account ID as well, which shouldn't be in this file. There's a warning somewhere. No, it wasn't. Go back to main. Right, so in here, I see it's going to say make credit. Money 100. T and AC. And then the same thing, but for 92. And then make debit. So I can still get this wrong, but I now have a place where I can make it correct. So I could do some checking to make sure that you are not setting, to make sure debit ends up being a negative amount, basically, whichever way I decide to do it. Insert, import these again. Okay, slight root. And then I should import these as well. So some ledger. Okay. Excellent. Save the file. Works better when you save the file. Okay, cool. So that's the works. I can build my list of ledger entries. Okay, so that's basically that's the basis of what I want to work on. So over the next, I don't know how long it'll be until I get bored of it. I'm going to start building this out into proper applications. So I'm going to look at servant for an API. Like I said, something like effectful for structuring application, but I'm going to look at making sure I log stuff properly and that I emit metrics and I handle errors properly and the database connectivity comes out of config, all those kinds of things. Cool. Thanks for watching along. Yeah, so hopefully next time we'll have a look at turning this into a proper application. Hopefully see you then. Goodbye.